Hello. And welcome to the A to Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. I'm Charlie Burris. That is Zach Reagan. Wherever you listen throughout the world, we thank you so much for listening to us. Zach and I talk everything balls every week here on the Big Orange Podcast. If you want to listen to that on the reg, go over to the A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed on Apple, Spotify, and rate, review, and most importantly, subscribe, because if you do subscribe there, you won't miss our shows when we drop them on Mondays. But speaking of Mondays, we are back. I'm back in the land of the living. Was in Las Vegas in Arizona last week, and we are back on schedule now. It is 4 p.m. on Monday, and we are recording live on YouTube. And so if you go over to the A to Z Sports Nashville YouTube channel, and you subscribe, hit the notification bell, and tune into the show on Monday, you can quite literally participate in the show. You can get into the comments, hang out with us, and we like to interact with the comments, and got some amazing listeners that tune in every week. And so come be one of them, because you can just be a part of the show. It's awesome. At Charlie_Burris, at Zach TNT, at A to Z Sports. A to Z Sports.com for the stuff that Zach writes on the internet. Facebook.com/A to Z Sports Nashville. You know where to find us. But boy, it is good to be back. My trip out west was fun. Had a really good time. Ate some good food. My wife got sick from the airplane, so that was really cool. The airplane out there, we had to deal with that the entire time. But other than that, we also popped a tire on the interstate on a pothole. That was really cool. And then I think that is actually the only stuff that went wrong on that trip. Otherwise, it was good. Zach, you have actually been around. What's up, man?
Yeah, did you bring back plenty of winnings? Did you win a lot of money there in Vegas? Did you gamble at all? How did that go? Because that's always the first question, when somebody goes out to Vegas.
I'm not a gambler. We were there for more of the food, and we went and saw a stand-up comedian that I really like named Ryan Long. If you don't know him, he's hilarious. And it was just some stuff like that. But the gambling, we put $50 in a few slot machines and lost it all. That was about all I needed in Las Vegas. That was enough gambling for me. Not really my deal.
It's usually my approach with that too. It's just a quick way for me to lose money. I've tried like some of the online poker stuff, which I'm sure that's not anything like what it is in an actual casino, but it's not. I'm not good at it, so I know my limitations.
Yeah. I am, if it is anything at all, I do sports gambling with our great sponsor, Superbook Sports. And I have at times been good at that. I did have last year, I believe I netted money betting on sports when I got that sort of report that they give you at the end of the year. So I've been decent sometimes, but most of the time it's a losing.
Do you have a philosophy? Not that you're too into the weeds on gambling or anything like that, but do you have a philosophy when it comes to betting on Tennessee sports? Do you get emotional with it, or you just stay away completely?
Don't do it, because our good friend Austin Stanley, he's an emotional hedge guy. He puts he's a bet on whoever when they're playing Tennessee, just in case Tennessee loses. I just don't. I'm a completely stay away from Tennessee. I'm a little stitious. I'm not superstitious. I'm a little stitious, and that comes down to gambling. What can I say? But before we get into everything that we're going to talk about on today's show, I do have to tell you about, speaking of our great sponsors, I got to tell you about them. We'll start out with Rattle and Snap Tennessee Whiskey from Long Still Distillery. Make your own luck just like Tennessee football's fast-paced Rattle and Snap offense with Rattle and Snap Tennessee Whiskey and Superbook Sports, who we've already been talking about. There's no better place to wager on your favorite sports than Superbook Sports. Go to superbook.com and download the app today. Superbook Sports. Omaha Steaks. Get $30 off your order of perfectly aged steaks, juicy burgers, and decadent desserts with our promo code VOLS. That is VOLS. Omaha Steaks. And finally, Farm Bureau Health Plans. For better coverage, better rates, and better service, go to fbhp.com/ATOZ. Farm Bureau Health Plans. To start the show off, I'll give you a quick rundown of what we're going to talk about. Obviously, it's going to be spring ball. The second scrimmage happened over the weekend. We're going to kind of give a breakdown of that, but then also preview for the spring game that is coming up. And here's the announcement here. Zach and I, at least tentatively, if there's no roadblocks that happen, we're going to be at the game. We will both be there in the press box. The Tennessee Sports Administration decided to give us two idiots press passes to this game. What are they thinking? I don't know. But we are going to be there in an actual, somewhat official capacity. Are you looking forward to this, Zach, to be in there?
Yeah, it's actually been a while since I've been to a Tennessee spring game. I haven't covered one in like media credentials and all that in a while. I've been to several regular season games. I just haven't been to the spring game. I haven't actually attended one since I think Jeremy Pruitt's first year. So it should be fun to see. Obviously, like everyone else, anxious to see Nico in person and the rest of this Tennessee offense and Joe Milton too. It's a lot of good stuff that we'll see. A lot of these young players that have been receiving a lot of hype this preseason, offseason, and spring practice, which we'll talk about. Excited to see them. So it should be a good time.
I did cover a ton in my time when I was officially media. I think the last one that I covered was Heupel's first year for A to Z Sports. But then there wasn't one last year, right? Because of the renovations. So
right, yeah, there wasn't one.
Yeah, they just had like a scrimmage that they showed on a big screen.
Yeah, I think
outside.
it was during a baseball weekend. There was a big baseball weekend. I can't remember who they were playing, but I think they had like a block party set up and all that. And I can't remember if the weather was good or not, but Danny White did, kind of made the best of the situation.
He did, and that's okay. Oh, look at Big Ten Jeff. He said it's a spring game. Thought you get press passes to the regular games. Wrong. Zach got press passes to the games during the season.
Yeah, I went last year, and I think we've both been to a ton of regular season Tennessee games.
The only thing I don't know the current. I mean, this is kind of shop talk. I don't know the current SID. I'm gonna have to meet him. So hopefully he's a nice guy. We'll see. I'm not sure. Sports information director for folks that have never covered sports. He's kind of the gatekeeper of sorts. But we'll see. And we may do a live broadcast from there. Not totally sure what we're going to do yet. We got to strategize, but we will be there. That's going to be fun. Also on the show today, we're going to talk about how the Titans are meeting with Hendon Hooker, supposedly, according to a report. They're going to meet with him on Wednesday. And then they're also meeting with Will Levis. Please do not draft Will Levis. Please, Titans. And then other NFL draft updates, including Darnell Wright getting in the DMs with some NFL media and tweeting through it. And we're going to talk about that. And then we'll probably finish with a little bit of baseball. What else do we have on the docket here? Yeah, a little bit of baseball. Oh, and then, of course, how could I forget about this? They're recruiting commits. We got to talk about the recruits. A couple in the 24 class, one in the 25 class. We're going to break it all down. But before we do that, I got to tell you about our first amazing sponsor, Omaha Steaks. Spring is in the air, and you know what that means, folks. Spring grilling. The steak experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to spring into something delicious with their semi-annual sale. You can get 50% off site-wide. Grab all your favorites like perfectly aged tender steaks, ocean fresh seafood, juicy burgers, air-chilled chicken, and decadent desserts. Plus, when you go to omahasteaks.com and use promo code VOLS, that is VOLS, at checkout, you'll get an additional $30 off your order. It is the perfect way to get fired up and spring into something special. Don't wait. Go to omahasteaks.com, use promo code VOLS at checkout, and take advantage of this deal. Omaha Steaks is ready to ship your order right away, and you're going to want to hurry because 50% off site-wide is only happening for a limited time. Don't miss your chance to save. I've had them delivered straight to my door. So convenient, so tasty. You got to get your hands on some Omaha Steaks and use promo code VOLS at checkout to get that additional $30 off from their already awesome semi-annual sale today. Minimum order baby required. That is Omaha Steaks, promo code VOLS, VOLS. All right. So spring ball, second scrimmage of spring was over the weekend, and then we got the actual orange and white game coming up on Saturday, where Zach and I will be. And in this scrimmage, some of the things that you heard from Heupel in his press conference, and then just from the reports, the sources of the people that were there. Heupel himself brought up the running backs. He emphasized them. They said that they were good. And then also that just the offense in general, you heard in that first scrimmage that the offense wasn't so hot. And then in this one, they were better. And that was sort of the notes that I heard brought up the most. Did you hear anything else from the scrimmage, Zach?
I mean, really, for me, the big message was, and it really wasn't a specific message. It was just hearing Heupel and some of the coaches really throughout spring practice, the way they've talked about the improved depth. I mean, you think about this team and you think about everybody that Tennessee lost: Hendon Hooker, Jalen Hyatt, Cedric Tillman, Darnell Wright, Byron Young. The list goes on. I mean, a ton of great players that they lost, but really going into 2023, it feels like this team is deeper across the board. Like, yeah, you've lost some of those stars, but you have guys that you hope can step up. You hope Joe Milton obviously can be in that Hendon Hooker role and play to that level. You hope that maybe Squirrel White steps into that Jalen Hyatt role and so on. But just the depth that this team has. You talked about the running back room. I remember going into last year, us talking about, okay, yeah, if Jalen Wright or Jabari Small goes down, that room could be in a lot of trouble after they lost a couple of kids to transfer. You know, Tyon Evans had left. And now it's a position of strength where you've got two clear top three guys in Jalen Wright, Jabari Small, and Dylan Sampson. And, you know, really Jalen Wright looks to probably be the lead guy out of that. I think he's going to overtake Jabari Small this season. Then you got Cam Seldon and Deshaun Bishop, who Josh Heupel's really talked up a lot. So a lot of depth in that room, which is nice because we saw, you know, Jabari Small got banged up at times last year. Dylan Sampson struggled in pass protection early in the year. Jalen Wright's had some ball security issues at times. I mean, he played much better and ran a lot more physically last season. But you still had you could have used some of that depth last year. So I think that's encouraging. Offensive line depth. I mean, you lose Darnell Wright and Jerome Carvin, but you're also deeper at the offensive line. I don't know if you'll have a guy that plays to Darnell Wright's level necessarily, but it does feel like they can rotate guys there a lot more easily than they could have last year. And the same goes for the defensive line as well. You lose Byron Young, but you've got some nice depth there stepping up. Josh Heupel referenced how he feels like there's a lot of things different that they can do with the defensive line this year as far as rotating guys out. I mean, they'd like to have like 8 to 10 defensive linemen that they can rotate in and out to really be where they want to be with the way that Tennessee's defense kind of has to play in complementary football with the offense. You know, as quick as the offense is often, even on a successful drive, the offense can be off the field in, you know, less than 5 minutes real time pretty often. That's taxing on the defense. So across the board, I think the depth is the biggest thing for Tennessee. And that's to be expected. I mean, that's where Tennessee should be going into the third season. It takes time to build that depth. You're finally kind of starting to see it get there.
Absolutely. It's encouraging that there are options to choose from. Yeah, even in that discussion about the offensive line, I think that's the one that most people have been wondering about if you are following things closely, just because you lost so much there. And yeah, I mean, you have multiple pieces to choose from. Some of them have been banged up. I know even this week, like Ollie Lane was out, and then of course you had Cooper Mays been out, and you have some other things like that. But then they've been trying to figure out JJ Crawford and Gerald Mincey and all these. And you go down the list, the transfers, Andre Carrick and John Campbell, and you actually have options. And that's encouraging, even though you lost potentially the best right tackle in the SEC. You know, you still can probably get it figured out. And that's always nice. I think we may have found, I don't know. This is going to sound negative, but really I mean this positively, because I do think long term this kid could be a really fun player. But I think we may have found the emergent spring player that you hear absolutely nothing about when the season actually starts. Do you know who I'm going to say?
Offense or defense?
It's on offense.
I mean, I'm assuming maybe Bishop, because we've heard so much about him.
Exactly. Deshaun Bishop. I believe Heupel brought him up in that press conference.
Yeah.
He's running back, and I like this kid a lot. Let me just say, it's just funny anecdote about Deshaun Bishop. I have a kid that's like done some landscaping for me. It's like a family friend's son who's done landscaping for me, and he played with Deshaun Bishop at Carnes. He's a Knoxville kid, and just like was like, oh, he's so good. You know, he was telling me about Deshaun Bishop, and ultimately he goes to Tennessee. So I've been hearing about Deshaun Bishop for a while, and then now in spring ball, he's getting hyped up. And I will put it this way: I hope Deshaun Bishop doesn't become a big factor in the season, because that means some dudes got hurt, I think. And that's why I mean, like, this might sound bad on the surface, but I absolutely mean no offense there. at all. I think long term he could be a good player for Tennessee, but I don't think during the actual season you're going to see much out of him. But I love that he's getting his name brought up, and it's really awesome. Then also Cam, Mr. Jones says it in the comments here, Cam Seldon was brought up too with that position. So that's encouraging. You got dudes to choose from. What a time that we probably thought we weren't going to see for quite a while at Tennessee. They actually have some depth in year 3 with Heupel. So that's nice. But anything else from the scrimmage before we move on to the spring game?
Well, I think when it comes to Heupel praising somebody like Bishop and some of these other young guys, it's not when Josh Heupel is praising a true freshman, it's not the same as when he's praising an upperclassman that they're expecting to start. I mean, it's two different levels of expectation there. And I think we saw that with Nico a little bit this past week. The hype for Nico was starting to build and build. And Tennessee fans know that Joe Milton's the guy. Joe Milton's going to be the guy unless he gets hurt or he just falls flat on his face in 2023, which none of us expect, but anything's possible. But Heupel's been talking really great about a Nico, and you've seen some of these other national media outlets start trying to force this narrative that there's going to be a quarterback battle in this decision that Tennessee has to make, and that's just not the case. I mean, it's Joe Milton. He's been in this offense. This is his 3rd year. It's so important that this offense back and forth like the back of your hand before you go out there and operate it. You saw Hendon Hooker get so much more efficient at running it the longer he was in it. And there's no substitute for that experience. So when Heupel's praising Nico, it's more about in relation to Nico being a true freshman and still being very young in his football career. And after the last scrimmage, Heupel he didn't necessarily say that, but he did point out like, hey, Nico's still got a long way to go before, and that's not a bad thing. He should have a long way to go. That's a lot he should still be in high school. We've said it a ton. He should be in his spring semester of high school right now. He's got a lot to learn, a long way to get there. You hope that he doesn't have to see the field this season unless it's in garbage time. But I think that's something people need to understand a little bit, is that the praise for a true freshman does not necessarily mean that guy's going to come out and be a starter in 2023 or even play a big role. I mean, it just means they're seeing good things from him so far.
I mean, I think you heard all you needed to hear on the report that came out of that scrimmage. He fumbled the football. So, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, he's a bust. Sailing down the river, he's done. But that was real. I'm not making that up. I believe he did. He fumbled and he recovered it himself. I don't know. I read a bunch of stuff as much as I could about that scrimmage. So I'm gonna assume that's true. No, you're exactly right. The best case scenario is that Nico doesn't play this season, and that Milton is the guy. I would say of Milton this offseason, I feel about him in a very real way. I feel about him the way that I was really hoping he would be in that first season with Heupel. You heard a lot of hype about him. He's huge. He's got a Cam Newton type of build, and he's an arm that can chuck the ball 10 miles, which that was true back then, but now he's got a little more honed in, it seems like. We were really excited, and I think this offseason I feel about Joe Milton in a realistic way, the way that I was hoping he would be in that first season with Heupel. And so hopefully that does come to fruition, and we don't have to worry about the whole Nico Milton debate, because that would mean that Joe is not playing so hot. So we'll go from there. But as far as the orange-white game goes, I like this. Austin Anderson says, how much do I got to donate to get into the press box? Honestly, for me, I created my own website and just made nice with the sports information director, and eventually they let me in years ago, and so and then through A to Z I've kept that door open. So it's maybe more about time donation than it is about money donation. But hey, I'll put it this way: Tennessee will let you do almost anything at the right price, I think. So maybe there's
it's kind of insane the level of media attention that local media attention that Tennessee gets when you see some of these other media scrums, even for their SEC programs. Like the media grouping at Tennessee is, I mean, you go look at Missouri, for example, it pales in comparison. And even some of the bigger Big Ten and ACC schools, it's not even close. It is it's pretty wild. It's almost like covering the Patriots or something. I imagine, you go in that media room and it's just full of people. It's pretty wild.
It really is crazy. That's a whole different kind of something. Honestly, I could do a whole podcast on Tennessee media. It's a wild thing. I think we both have some interesting stories from our time in media at Tennessee. But yeah, it is kind of ridiculous how many media members there are. I mean, case in point, they're letting us in the door for this spring game. Is that all you really need to know right there? But as far as the orange and white game goes, I'll just sort of throw it to you initially here, Zach. What are you looking for? Because it's always a toss-up. We don't know exactly how it's going to be conducted. And that's a huge part of it. You know, what exactly are they going to do? Because Butch used to do this ridiculous stuff where they would a point
Final
system you literally couldn't understand.
310 to 160 or something.
And then they would have these intermissions where they like ran drills and, you know, who knows exactly the form that it's going to take. I would like for it to just be, you know, a football game. That would be cool. But most schools don't do that. But what are you looking out for when we're there on the sidelines, Zach?
I think my main thing is the secondary, of course. Like that was the weakest point of this team a year ago. You really want to see some progress made there. Specifically, I think Danico Slaughter is an interesting guy to watch where he's kind of moving full-time to cornerback. He finished the year there. Willie Martinez mentioned last week that he only played like a handful of snaps at cornerback last spring. Didn't play any there during fall camp and into the regular season during practice. Tennessee got in a pinch. They needed to move somebody over there. They just kind of threw Slaughter over there. Yeah, he had some not so great moments like all of Tennessee's secondary, but he also just wasn't very familiar with the position. So now that he's had a full off season of making that transition, really, I mean, we already know he's a hard hitter. He's a physical player. Obviously, you saw that when he played safety. Interested to see how he progresses this season. If he can progress and really become a strength there in that secondary, that'll be huge for Tennessee. And as far as watching the secondary, it's kind of hard to gauge going against Tennessee's offense because of the uniqueness of Tennessee's offense. If guys in the secondary are just getting beat like one-on-one in man coverage, I don't think that's a huge deal if you're seeing Danico Slaughter get beat by Squirrel White or something because Squirrel's so fast. You don't want to see those broken coverages where they're not communicating well. They're in the right place. As long as they're in the right place, that's kind of what you hope to see in this spring game, I think.
Yeah, marginal improvement there for sure. I mean, vast improvement would be really nice. Obviously, be looking for some of the newcomers. At this point, I'm not even sure who's 100% healthy, who's not. But, you know, in terms of the DBs, Gabe Judy Lally, and, you know, you mentioned Slaughter, whole set of young guys there too that are newbies that you want to see maybe where they're at. I like Austin's answer here. He said linebackers, defensive backs, and offensive line. I think the offensive line, we've already mentioned, something that people are definitely going to be watching, but you have injuries there
linebacker now.
Yeah, at linebacker, that one is big because you got the transfer from BYU. You have
Beasley.
Aaron Beasley, and then
Herring,
you sort of are like
Elander, some young guys that can really had good springs.
Where do you go after that? Because you have heard different things about some of the guys on the depth chart there. For sure. I mean, everywhere on the defense is important. You lost Byron Young on the defensive line. Where are they going there? Like, who is going to step up? Who's going to take that leap where you're where you want to see it out of? I mean, I was trying to think out on the defense who really made that leap this season. It was kind of a group effort in this past season when they were better. Of course, they in a few games got absolutely sliced apart. But you know, Byron Young. I think Byron Young is a great example. Obviously, he's now an NFL prospect. Who's going to be on this defense? The person that steps up, or maybe the people that step up. It'd be great if if everybody could. I would like that. But who is that going to be? And then obviously the offensive line. I wish that we could see the set of wide receivers. It looks like there's going to be injuries there. Squirrel White is banged up to some extent. I believe I saw Dante Thornton has been too. So who knows to what extent everybody's going to be able to go.
I think, though, with that, Mr. Jones there asked what 3 wide receivers, do you see Tennessee starting? I mean, they're open to playing 4 if they have to, depending on their personnel and what kind of matchups they can work, depending on the tight ends and how they feel about that. But it's probably more likely that you'll see that 3 wide receiver set most often. I think Brew McCoy is penciled in there, and just because of his playing style and it's unique, he's kind of the short yardage guy, can break tackles and fight for those extra yards.
And I think Brew won't be playing in the spring game, I believe, right? Because he had knee stuff.
Yeah, I don't think he's done much at all this spring. Yeah. And then Ramel Keaton is the guy that might odd man out. It sounds like the way he stepped up as a veteran leader, he almost has to be on the field because he proved his worth last season, made some huge catches. I don't know if Tennessee, gets the momentum and wins that game against Florida if he doesn't make that diving catch before halftime, or the catch against Alabama to get him in field goal range on the first play of that last drive. I mean, he made some massive plays for Tennessee. I think he'll be in there as one of the go-to guys. So it might be Squirrel White and Dante Thornton, rotating a little bit there out of the slot. I know they can move both of those guys around, especially Thornton, to create some mismatches. So these things usually work themselves out too. Like, they're not going to be 100% all season. You might see them, flip-flopping drives a little more than they did last season with their personnel, where maybe Squirrel White gets a couple series, then Thornton or just whoever has the hot hand that game. I don't know how they'll manage it, but I think it's pretty clear that those four guys are a little bit above everybody else on the roster, even though some of the young guys like Nathan Leacock have been having, good springs and have received a lot of praise from Josh Heupel and Kelsey Pope and other offensive coaches. But I imagine those four are pretty much locked in, and you'll see various combinations there.
Like John Hill says, smash that like button. Please do if you feel so inclined. If you are enjoying the show, hit that like button on the YouTube or Facebook stream, wherever you might be watching. But he said, BYU fellas should be fun to watch. Keenan Peely, Gabe Judy Lally, both at linebacker and defensive back, respectively. There, yeah.
I love Judy Lolly's mentality. Coming in, that dude's all business.
Yes, I think there's some real potential with both of those dudes. Austin says he'll be watching Nathan Leacock, wide receiver. Just take your pick there. I think something honestly. This probably going to be potentially the most interesting thing out of all of it is probably Nico. I mean, it's such a straightforward kind of normie answer, I guess, as far as this goes. But seriously, how exciting is this that you have, the number one overall recruit from the last recruiting class period is at the University of Tennessee. He has so much hype. Yes, I think we've all sort of established like Milton is the guy until they have a good reason for him not to be. But just to see him, I think, interact with the first opportunity that he'll have to interact with fans at large. Fans where it's going to be a lot of people around. And I don't know what all access they're going to give fans, if there will be any interaction at all. I honestly haven't. Is there a autograph signing period or anything like that? I don't think I've seen it. I apologize. I should probably know that. But like I said, we're going as media. We're not going as fans. So
yeah, I'm not sure. I know they used to do that, obviously, and it'd be
they did
lengthy lines. But this, is this did they have a spring game in 2021, or was COVID wiped that out?
Yeah, I was there.
That's right. Heupel's first one. I can't remember if they did it there or not. Maybe since COVID, that's something that kind of got ushered out. But
yeah, but either way. He just has so much charisma, and he's just that dude. And I want to see how he plays, what kind of swagger he comes out with. If he comes out and looks like nervous, maybe in that first game, which I would say I would if I was in that position. Yeah,
you gotta have a little bit of nerves.
Sure. How do you not when you have kind of I guess pressure is the right word. When you have the pressure that he's had put on him, all the expectations. It really, it could be daunting. So we'll see exactly how he responds. But as far as that goes, anything else with the orange and white game before we move on to a little bit of Hendon Hooker talk, Darnell Wright talk? We're going to discuss his Twitter DMs, which have drawn some controversy these last couple of weeks. But anything else, Zach?
Yeah, I'll be interested to see. I'm always interested to see who comes back for these kind of things. That can kind of tell you the hype around the team and how everybody feels about it, what former players are in town to check things out. That's always fun to see.
We got a real wise guy in the comments here. He says, who cares about the balls besides you two? I don't know. You go look at the numbers on this show. It's a few more people besides us two.
Well, he did check in here, just check things out. So him as well.
Hey, I
maybe?
mean, you're here. I don't know. You tell me. Well, maybe he wants to hear some NFL talk, and we're gonna do that right after I tell everybody about our next great sponsor, which is Rattle and Snap Tennessee Whiskey. Where's my read? Here it is. Few things go better with a Tennessee sports victory than an awesome whiskey. And if you tuned in to me and Jonathan Crompton on the game day shows this past season, you saw us drink a victory whiskey after every game, and that whiskey was always the great Rattle and Snap Tennessee Select Straight Whiskey. Log Still Distillery has released a new Tennessee whiskey product line called Rattle and Snap Tennessee Whiskey, named after a long-forgotten game of chance. Rattle and Snap is a whiskey for those who make their own luck. There is a 4-year and an 8-year version. Here's a 4-year version right here. Beautiful bottle, an even more beautiful whiskey, great for your favorite cocktails to drink straight. If you saw me on the live stream with Jonathan Crompton, I drank it not just straight, but straight out of the bottle a lot. And it is very, very tasty. You can find it in stores across the state of Tennessee. It's also available in Kentucky, Indiana, and Mississippi. So run, don't walk to get yourself some Rattle and Snap whiskey for those Tennessee sports victories. They'll be back before you know it. Well, I guess baseball is still going on, although we're going to talk about everything that's happening with them near the end of the show today, and whether we should be, I don't know if panic mode is the right word, but concerned, I would say, because they lost yet another series this weekend. Now, to the Vols in the NFL draft. We're going to really, obviously, this is A to Z Sports Nashville is our parent company with this podcast, and they do broadcasts every day about the Titans, and the Titans are in the state of Tennessee. And so I will say they are set to meet with Will Levis today, I believe, or no, maybe tomorrow. And then on Wednesday, the report that I saw was that they're set to meet with Hendon Hooker. Correct me if I'm wrong on any of that. That's just it was on Twitter. All those NFL reporters just say that stuff. You don't ever really hear what comes of those things. But I'll put it this way. If the Titans take Will Levis, and even like I think Hendon Hooker will be available a little bit down the road. I'm not sure he's going to be a first round pick. There's sort of, a little bit of talk in a bunch of different ways there with Hooker because people are concerned about his injury, yada, yada. I think we all know. But if they draft Will Levis, especially at that like number 11 spot, just send me off a cliff, please. I don't know. But with that said, if Hendon Hooker is still available at a later point because people get spooked by his injury, please, Titans. I love Hendon Hooker. I love his work ethic. Obviously, I am extremely biased and am seeing everything through orange-colored glasses, but I would love to see that man in a Titans jersey, although I doubt I will.
Yeah, it's really tough to project where Hendon Hooker will go. It's always tough with the quarterbacks. I always think about, speaking of the Titans, Malik Willis last season. I mean, we saw him in mock drafts going to the Panthers in the top 10, the Steelers. I think they had like the number 24 pick, and they ended up passing on to take Kenny Pickett. Falls all the way down to the third round. So much of the stuff you hear right now, you really don't know what's accurate, what's not. But just the body of work from Hendon Hooker and Will Levis, when you compare the two and you take out how hard Will Levis throws the ball or how far he can throw it and any of that stuff, there's really no comparison for me when it comes to Hooker and Levis. Now, I'm not going to put Hooker in that Bryce Young, CJ Stroud category just yet. I think Bryce Young, to me, is the clear best quarterback in the draft. I mean, just look at what he did to Tennessee, a lot of other games. He's a legit superstar, his size aside. Between Hooker and Levis, like, it seems like a no-brainer. Levis was a turnover machine. He didn't keep his composure well at times. He would appear frustrated when things didn't go his way. Didn't make the right decisions all the time. Threw an interception like one every 28 passes, I think, this past season, where Hooker's was, I think, like one in every 59, 60 passes or something like that. I mean, even Joe Milton has a better, interception ratio than Will Levis. I've never really understood the love for Will Levis, and maybe this is another situation where he's a guy that falls to the second or third round where they're just trying to hype him up to conceal their draft plans. I think that does happen quite often. I'm interested to see where Hooker goes, though. I mean, there's a lot of teams out there where he'd be an ideal fit. The Detroit Lions, the Minnesota Vikings, the Seattle Seahawks, several of these teams that Tampa Bay Buccaneers that have later picks, they have a quarterback maybe right now, but it's not really like their franchise guy where you could bring Hooker in and let him compete for that job, sit a little bit because of the knee injury, and maybe win the job going into the next offseason. I mean, there's several scenarios there that make a lot of sense for Hooker. And the Titans are a similar situation as that with Ryan Tannehill and not really having a clear answer since that doesn't appear to be Willis, and they let Josh Dobbs go back to the Browns. I could certainly see the Titans being interested, but I don't think they'd be interested that high in the first round.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, outside of the Titans and just kind of dropping that part of it, we've had this discussion in the last few weeks, honestly, numerous times at this point, but I still just don't get it. What do people see in the kid from Kentucky? What am I missing? What? Maybe when you meet this kid in person, there's like something different, and that happens sometimes. I feel like people, maybe I'm a decent example of this. Like people maybe watch this show and I'm pretty like exuberant, enthusiastic, and I'm kind of loud. And then you meet me in real life and I'm reserved. I'm a more reserved person in a big social setting, things like that. Maybe it's that. It's like he projects one thing on a football field, and then when you actually get him behind closed doors, he actually like pulls it together and seems better. I don't know, because what we've seen is a turnover machine, got his head beat in by Tennessee. And what we've seen from Hendon Hooker is an incredible leader who barely ever threw an interception and who has shown great ability and great poise and great maturity and all, just pick your thing there. The kid had it all. He even wrote a children's book. He's like, Hendon Hooker is such a great dude, but then also a great quarterback. And I just don't see it. You said, I mean, with Bryce Young, sure. I completely see it. CJ Stroud, of course I see it. But people bring up Anthony Richardson here in the comments. I don't know that I see it there. He's been linked to the Titans too. Please no. At least I don't know. I don't. His ceiling's high.
Yeah, he has a high ceiling. We don't have enough info on him yet. He had the 1 year here at Florida, and we didn't really see enough from him. I feel like he has the potential there. I wouldn't want to use a top 10 pick on him because I think it's a severe boom or bust potential type situation with him. With Levis, there's a little bit more to go on. And I'll tell you, I like Anthony Richardson's demeanor better than Levis's. And I could be totally wrong here, but the vibe I get from Levis is a very Derek Carr, Russell Wilson, where he's trying to be a leader. He's trying to say the right things. He's very aware of his actions and how they'll be perceived. And he's like, I don't want to say putting on an act. It just doesn't feel genuine. Whereas Hendon Hooker is more of that, just he's himself. And we've seen he's had multiple sound bites, where they kind of go viral, not even like because he was trying to. I mean, they just go viral because it's a very genuine reaction where he's talking about his wide receivers getting open and he can't help that, or talking about playing with a chip on his shoulder at Tennessee because of disrespect. There's all these little moments that just seem very genuine coming from him. And I think that's why Tennessee players were so willing to follow him, and why Joe Milton, even as his direct competition, was so willing to follow him last season. And that's an intangible that you really can't quantify it with numbers at the combine or watching them throw. And it's the thing that Joe Burrow has. And I'm not trying to compare Hendon Hooker to Joe Burrow. I know we went down that road a little bit during the season last year. Joe Burrow is a superstar in his own right. But he does have that natural leadership ability, and several other guys in the NFL do as well. And I feel like Hooker has that. Doesn't mean that he's going to go in the NFL and light it up. If you've kept up with the NFL draft at all over the years, projecting what quarterbacks will do is nearly impossible. We've seen so many can't miss guys end up being bust. It happens all the time. So you don't want to put those expectations on Hooker either way. I just see some of those intangibles that I think make him a better fit for an NFL team than Will Levis.
Yeah, I completely agree. Because I don't know, a weird part of it from a foundational level is like Hooker would be older than a lot of the guys on the team already and kind of come installed that way, which that could also be a little hazardous, I guess, just because he'd be an old rookie like that. But still, he has those leadership intangibles that I just don't see with Levis. It just seems fake and kind of manufactured, and just, even in sort of the stunts that he's done, like the whole like mayonnaise in the coffee and like eating a banana with the peel still on it. I'm like, what are you doing? What is this? I don't get it, but Lord knows, maybe he'll go into the pros and just prove us all wrong, and then we're gonna look silly.
Yeah,
I guess,
it's certainly possible.
Whatever.
I mean,
as of right now,
and for you, him going to the Colts and doing that would be a nightmare scenario.
Oh boy. Yeah, please no. Although what I would love is if he got drafted by the Colts and then he was exactly what we think he's going to be. That would be so. It's a little, there's boomer bust potential there, kind of like Anthony Richardson. But yeah, either way, we'll just time will tell as far as that goes. Who really knows what'll happen there? But I'm certainly rooting for Hendon Hooker. And Titans, don't you dare draft Will Levis. I swear to you. Although I think Elias Gray, he said the scariest scenario that I heard, here it is. Scariest thing I heard was trading up to grab Anthony Richardson. No. Dude, no. Not on somebody that's that risky of a prospect.
It's a really tough spot for the Titans to be in, not to get into too much Titans talk here, but to need a quarterback where, Ryan Tannehill obviously his time's running out in Nashville. His time as an NFL player is nearing its end. I mean, obviously he's not a spring chicken anymore. Titans need a quarterback. They need a quarterback of the future, and they're sitting there with the number 11 pick where there's not really an obvious guy that you want to trade up for in this draft. I mean, even Bryce Young has question marks with his size. CJ Stroud might be the more sure option. It's hard to know for sure, again, projecting what they'll do. But outside of those two guys, even with those two guys, it's not a Joe Burrow type situation or an Andrew Luck type situation where this guy is pretty much a can't miss prospect. There's so much yet to be seen with both of those guys. And then obviously Hooker, Levis, and Richardson, a lot of questions there. So what do you do if you're the Titans? You just pass, take an offensive lineman, maybe try to grab somebody in the second or third round, which you tried to do last season with Malik Willis, and that didn't really work out. It's kind of that NFL purgatory that the Titans are in right now. They're not a bad team, but they're not about to compete for a Super Bowl either. And that's kind of the worst place to be. Like, I almost feel like just tank, go get a top draft pick, try to get Caleb Williams next year, and, move forward that way. I think you could find success much quicker than trying to just tread water and keep improving and retooling instead of rebuilding, as they like to say.
That probably is the right answer. I'll be fascinated to see how all that goes. I don't think I've even said it so far for anybody that might be a new watcher. Obviously, I'm a giant Titans fan, along with being a giant Vols fan. But I think an offensive lineman and packing it in for a quarterback next season is probably the move, especially now that you got Jeffrey Simmons locked in. But that's for a different show on this network. I'll let them litigate that. But while we're talking about NFL draft analysis, let's talk about Darnell Wright. This is an interesting one. So there is I guess, would you call this guy media? It seems like this guy is media in the way that we are media. He has about the same amount of followers as we do. I think you probably have more Twitter followers than this guy does, Zach. But his name is Willie Lutz. He covers the Bengals for a podcast that he does. Same Old Stripes podcast, whatever that is, for the Bengals. So he's not like a newspaper reporter or like somebody at Pro Football Focus or anything like that. But he posted on Twitter earlier today a direct message that was exchanged with Tennessee offensive lineman, or former Tennessee offensive lineman, Darnell Wright. Darnell was replying to a tweet of Willie Lutz's. Willie said this: Darnell Wright is a pure right tackle and has no business playing left tackle, which I would completely disagree. the guy played left tackle for an entire season at Tennessee, I believe his junior season. So he can do both. I think
he gave up just 3 sacks on 922 snaps in 2021. So
exactly. That's stupid analysis, Willie Lutz. Let's start there. But regardless, Darnell Wright, I don't necessarily have anything against this guy. I just disagree with that take. But Darnell Wright took that and replied to it in a direct message on Twitter. And he said, I can't say all. This is a family show. I can't say everything. That's true. Is it really? But I won't, just in case. Darnell replied to him and he said, "You are a pure expletive. What year did you play to say somebody has any business doing anything?" And then this Willie Lutz guy, he tweeted out a picture of that exchange. So I'll just say it to you, Zach. What is your initial thought on this, and then I'll give my take. I think we're probably on the same page here, but what do you think?
I mean, I kind of just laughed at first, and then I thought, okay, if this, like, let's be honest with myself. If this was Stetson Bennett, we would be giving him down the road over this and talking about what a terrible look it is. But at the same time, Darnell Wright has never been a problem at Tennessee, not even close to being a problem. The closest that he ever was to being a problem, if you can even say that, is when some people thought he might transfer, after 2020, and he did not. And those rumors just kind of came out of nowhere. Otherwise, he's pretty much keeps his head down and lets his play on the field do the talking. So it was kind of surprising to see that frustration come from him. But, I don't want to give him a pass because I think he should have just ignored it and let it roll off his back. I think you have that when you're an athlete. It's tough to get some of those criticisms. And Darnell Wright's not a guy that received a lot of criticism over the last 2 years. I mean, he played really well, especially this past season. If anything, it's been nothing but praise for him. So this wasn't, I think everybody pretty much agrees, though, that, yeah, he can play left tackle, but he's best suited to play right tackle. I think an NFL team that drafts him will want him at right tackle. And there are several NFL teams, including, oddly enough, the Bengals, that need a right tackle. Chiefs, several teams could use a right tackle. I think he should have just let it go. But in his defense, he did come back later. He apologized. He posted the screenshots of the follow-up direct message with Willie Lutz, and they worked it all out. So I will say kudos to him, to Darnell Wright for owning up to his mistake. I don't know if he'd have done it if it wasn't posted publicly, obviously. But I think he handled it after the fact as well as he could have. He probably should have just let it go to begin with, though. That's what I would have done.
Yeah, this sort of hits me in a few different ways. I think on one hand, I think it's proof that Darnell Wright, he's got that dog in him. Look at the way he plays football. I think that's obvious. It shows up in the way that he plays on the field. And he's just not taking crap off anybody. At the same time, yeah, it's a sign of immaturity. It's a sign of just like something stupid. Like, yeah, you shouldn't do that. We all sort of get that. But I also look at it and I laugh and I go like, he got this guy. That's funny. I kind of come at it from different angles. At the end of the day, yeah, this is going to be a sign of immaturity to NFL scouts.
But should it be? You don't think that these NFL players are sending messages to their teammates and to their friends when they see something in the media that we hear or whoever has a podcast or a website says? And they're like, look at this, jackass. I can't believe he said this about me. He's never played it. Like, these are conversations that are happening between players. This one just happened to be published. So I don't think it's a sign of immaturity necessarily from Darnell Wright or any other player that does it, because I think it's just human nature to some extent. Obviously, he's got to show some restraint there. And I think if he knew that guy would have posted the DM publicly, which I would not do, I don't think that's a good look to post messages with athletes without their kind of consent publicly, because that just kind of goes against the ethics. Even though with this new media and these lines get blurred and it's not the traditional type of media and journalism that we saw for years, I still think that's a line that you probably shouldn't cross, to be honest.
Yeah, I do not love that. And then he followed it up, the Willie Lutz guy. he posted that direct message, and then underneath it he said, and just like that, Darnell Wright is off my board for the Bengals, which that's your own mistake, because as you're saying there, I mean, what players behind closed doors don't say stuff like this, where you would go like, I mean, we say stuff when we're off here about things that we read and see that we don't say on here. Obvious, everybody does. You all do it. We all do that type of stuff, and yeah, I'm sure they see criticism from draft analysts and to each other behind closed doors. They go, "Screw that guy. He's an idiot. This is stupid." And yeah, I mean, you do run a little afoul direct messaging the guy. I would say I do agree with you. It's not necessarily a sign of immaturity. It could be, but it's not necessarily that. And then, yeah, him posting it publicly on Twitter is not cool and not great. And so at the end of the day, here's the bottom line for Darnell Wright. He'll just go out there and prove it on the football field, because he was not a problem at Tennessee. Honestly, he was probably the most reliable dude on that football team for his entire time at Tennessee.
Yeah, he's always out there.
His consistency was unbelievable. That's his biggest selling point, probably. If it's not just his pure, straight up play, his general consistency of just always being available. Was he ever injured? I'd have to go back and look. But, some things like that, like he just was never a problem. Even,
I know he didn't miss any games during the hypo era.
Yeah, at least. And so I
played in the Orange Bowl when he could have easily sat out. Too.
Yes. And so I just think the play is going to speak for itself. Any team that sees this and goes like, "Oh no, this guy's off the board," that's stupid.
Oh, the Bengals would love to have him, but he'll never
exactly.
fall. I think they have the number 28 pick. I mean, Darnell Wright's. I mean, he's in that range now where he's going to like the Patriots at 14 or the Packers at 15. I mean, he's probably going to be a top 20 pick at least. Somebody might trade up to get him too.
The Titans at 11, maybe. No, probably not.
Yeah. Well, maybe you never know.
I'd love it.
They need a tackle.
Yeah, they need every position across the offensive line, frankly. But yeah, the play will speak for itself. Yeah, and he did. Like, I'm looking. Darnell posted a follow-up. He said, "I was probably a little heavy on the expletive
on the what
part on the that part."
There's really no delicate way to put that.
There's not. There's no good way to say what he said, because it's a little bit of an off the wall.
Which personally, those are the type of things that make me laugh when it's a really out of nowhere.
Exactly. That's why I said at least he was a little creative in his insult.
Yeah.
He said, "Maybe I was a little heavy on that part. Apologize for that. Looking at what you said, you were probably defending me a bit when you said it was just frustrating when the game's all you love. It's all good though. Maybe I'll be in Cincy in the next month and we can do a podcast." And the guy that kind of made niceties. Of course, this guy apologized. Of course he did. He's not going to actually stick by his guns. He said, "Man, I love what you do on the football field. I do kind of feel like an ass for minimizing that." He came correct too. So everybody apologizes and yada, yada. At the end of the day, if you pass up on Darnell Wright because of something he said in a Twitter DM, you are an idiot. And he is arguably the best offensive lineman in this entire draft class. And if you can't see that from his play on the field, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, Will Anderson, Alabama edge rusher, probably going to go top 5 in the draft, said that was the best offensive line he played against in college football. There's been other analysts. Was it Bucky Brooks? Might have been somebody else. I don't want to misspeak, but said he could be the best player in the draft, which obviously pretty high praise. We'll see. There's a lot that has to play out before you can even figure all that out, who the best player in the draft was. But, I mean, he played at a really high level, went up against some really elite competition, and more than held his own last season.
I think there's potential for him to easily be a Ramon Foster type of dude, a long tenured, just solid, consistent dude in the NFL. I would say his college career suggests that possibility heavily to me. Will he be like the best offensive lineman in the NFL? I do not know. But I think just what we've seen in college, he could absolutely be something like that and be somebody that Tennessee fans can be really, really proud of. And this isn't going to put some kind of stain on that. It's college kid stuff. And it's, whatever.
I'm more interested to see where Jerome Carvin goes, to be honest, because that
Yeah.
guy, I feel like, is so underrated. I mean, he played both guard spots, can play center, the versatility. I don't think he allowed a sack last season. If so, it was just one while he was playing guard for Tennessee. He's a guy that wasn't even invited to the combine, talking about going round 6, maybe round 7. I think, I don't think he's going to be like a perennial Pro Bowler type guy, but I think he's a guy that can have a long career in the NFL as a starter.
I hope so. I'm especially rooting for him because of how much of sort of an unsung
He's a good
hero.
dude too.
Yeah, just quietly got the job done. Similarly to Darnell Wright. Darnell Wright has obviously gotten a lot more praise and went to the combine, yada yada. But yeah, I'm definitely rooting for Carvin because he has kind of gotten shafted a little bit. So hopefully he gets his due. I mean, I think he has that same potential that I just mentioned, like a Ramon Foster type of player. He absolutely does. So we'll see exactly where they go. The NFL drafts in a few weeks,
a couple of
in
weeks.
May.
What either? I think.
So you went out. What'd you say?
No, I said it's in Kansas City in a few weeks.
Yes, it is. We'll be watching closely, obviously, and we'll talk about it here on this show, and just kind of go from there. Anything else with before we get to this recruiting, Zach?
No, I mean, we'll see how the draft plays out. Tennessee could have 3 players drafted in the first round, depending on how Hooker and Hyatt go. Although Jim Nagy did kind of point out this morning, Senior Bowl director, that he's hearing that most NFL teams only have one wide receiver graded as a round 1 talent, the guy from Ohio State. Again, don't really know what to make of that information this time of year. There's all kinds of stuff flying around, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Chiefs or somebody nab Hyatt there at the end of the first round. He'd be a perfect fit for the Chiefs. I've always thought that was the ideal scenario for him, just because of the way that Andy Reid runs that offense. He's very innovative. We saw him use some of those switch releases even in the Super Bowl, which Josh Heupel used with Jalen Hyatt a lot last season to get him open. So I think just some of the little similarities between the offense and the way, and obviously playing with Patrick Mahomes would be a dream for any wide receiver. I think that's one spot where he could go and have a lot of success.
Man, I would love it. I want to see all these dudes get taken, because if they do all get drafted in higher spots, that's really good for Tennessee's recruiting. And that's what we're going to talk about right now, right after I tell you about Farm Bureau Health Plans. There's the right graphic right there. Farm Bureau Health Plans has been serving Tennesseans for over 75 years. Much has changed in Tennessee over the years, but some has stayed the same. Farm Bureau Health Plans has always valued personal relationships, especially when it comes to good health and good service. Plan on Farm Bureau Health Plans for health, dental, and vision. For better coverage, better rates, and better service, go to fbhp.com/ATOZ or walk into one of their 200 plus locations across the state of Tennessee. That is fbhp.com/ATOZ. Farm Bureau Health Plan. Support them because they support us, and go get yourself a great health plan. Now, in recruiting, it was a big week for Tennessee. I would say no single prospect that Tennessee got this week was a giant splash, but as a whole, it equaled a big week of recruiting for Tennessee. And I think that the headliner here is 2024 offensive lineman, I believe, from Fort Collins, Colorado, Gage Ginther. Then you had 2024 offensive tackle Jesse Perry, and then 2025 defensive back Shamar Arnaud, who committed to Tennessee. Probably not going to have a ton to say about the 2025 guy. It's just so far into the future, although a great pickup. Obviously, any defensive pickup for Tennessee at this point is amazing, and I love it. And he's, I believe, the first commit for the 2025 class, and that's great. We're probably going to concentrate more on these 2024 pickups because that class, it's starting to take shape. And Tennessee is a top 7 right now. I believe they are the number 7 class in America on the 247 Sports Composite the last time I looked. Now with those two guys in the boat, what'd you think of these pickups, Zach?
I mean, my view on it might not be as popular as some, because I think you're getting into a scenario here with Tennessee where you're going to have a few of those hidden gems every class, and I trust in Josh Heupel and his staff's ability to evaluate players and bring the right guys in. But ultimately, I don't think you're going to beat Georgia consistently until you're out recruiting them. And landing some of these lower 3-star guys that might be hidden gems, diamonds in the rough. I feel like you get 1 or 2 of those each class. And now Tennessee's got, 3 of them at the bottom of their class, including 2 of the guys pretty much that committed this past weekend. I mean, they're ranked in the 700s. And I know recruiting rankings aren't the end all be all, but I don't know. Like, I'm kind of skeptical of, is this enough to go beat Georgia? Because Georgia's going to have offensive linemen ranked in the top 100, and talent is talent. It's hard for me to reconcile that this is going to be what it takes to beat Georgia.
I would generally agree with that. I mean, somebody says it in the comments here, and it's true. Is the number 1 player from Colorado in Ginther. But also, you take that all in totality. You are probably right. These players are not on that same level as what Georgia's pulling in, as what Alabama's pulling in, and that you have to get those dudes to beat them consistently. Obviously, Alabama had so much more talent than Tennessee did this season, and you beat them. It's absolutely possible, and the way that Josh Heupel coaches is made to sort of play over your head.
Well, yeah, I think Heupel out-coached Saban.
Yes,
Alabama fans might not like it, but I mean, you pretty much heard Saban say it in a sense where they didn't have an answer. They made adjustments that didn't work. Kirby, on the other hand, Georgia out-coached Tennessee that game. I don't think you can argue
outsmarted. That's what you're about to say.
Yeah. I had to stop myself there.
He did. Unfortunately, he did.
Yeah.
And so, these pickups individually, I hope that they are the diamonds in the rough. It is the number 1 player from the state of Colorado. That's great. I really like the players that they are getting, and you've already seen it multiple times with Heupel, where they've gotten guys where when they first committed to Tennessee, they're like a 3-star, and then by the time the end of the class came, they were rated far higher. Yeah, Mr. Jones says it here. Nathan Laycock started out as a 3-star, and he ended up being rated higher than some of the super highly coveted guys that a lot of people want. Carnell Tate. Shout out to Ohio State there. Yeah, he ended up ranked higher than Carnell Tate. And
that is a good point. I mean, we do kind of have to wait and see how these guys finish.
It is a long game as far as this goes, and the evaluation from Heupel and his staff so far. Who am I to question it? They went 11-2 last season. What am I supposed to say? Was good enough for the second best record in the SEC. So I think that speaks for itself. But as far as that goes, to get back into that elite echelon, it is always going to come down to getting those elite players consistently. At least some of them.
I mean, just look at Georgia whenever Tennessee played them last season, when you got massive dudes like Jalen Carter and Broderick Jones, in the trenches. You have to have a guy, an answer for those guys. And it's just hard unless they're those elite defensive linemen and offensive linemen. And I mean, that's what it's going to take eventually.
Exactly. Now, I think I said this a couple of weeks ago. I might have said last week, but the fact is this: you slayed the Alabama Dragon, and that's great, and it's an amazing place to start. And I think it absolutely directly led A to B to some big recruiting pickups in this class. I think it absolutely did. You have to keep winning games like that, and eventually, you keep winning those games. Obviously, the recruits are going to look and they're going to go like, well, if I go to Alabama, I'm going to lose to Tennessee. So I'm just going to go to Tennessee. Eventually that will happen. And it comes down to this. And this is true for every single team that isn't Georgia. Somebody's got to beat Georgia. You got to beat them. Because every single kid is always going to look when they have the choice between Georgia and whatever school you root for, if it's Tennessee or somebody else, they're always just going to go look and go, well, Georgia literally lost to no one. So I'm going to go there. Like, that's the fact of the matter. It makes me want to crawl in a hole and, vomit that Georgia is this good, but
And
they are.
You've got to land some of those elite guys from Georgia too, like the Eric Berries that it used to be at Tennessee. Like you can't beat. There's just not enough talent in Tennessee. I mean, there's more talent in Tennessee than there used to be, but it's still not the same level as Georgia. You've got to be able to get those guys, and you cannot do that until you beat Georgia. Like, it's just not going to happen. To your point, why would an in-state kid from Georgia pick Tennessee over Georgia at this point?
Yeah, it just it is what it is. As frustrating as that answer may be, but until then, I do think that finding the diamonds in the rough, developing guys, evaluating as well as you can, because Tennessee, largely with the resources they have, you're going to be able to win a lot of those mid-size recruits. You have an incredible NIL setup. You have one of the most impressive fan bases, in my opinion, the most impressive fan base in all of college football. And that's going to sell itself. But at a certain point, to get to that elite status, it is beating Alabama consistently. It is not falling behind Florida or whoever else. And it is eventually beating Georgia. Obviously, that is an unbelievably tall task with the way that team is built at the moment. But that is what it's going to take to get back there. But I like where Tennessee is at recruiting-wise. It is just not – it's not blowing me out of the water, but it's not disappointing me either almost at all. Obviously, it was a top 10 class. It was, the number 10 class, I think, on multiple platforms this last season. And so you're right there. Clemson has won national championships with talent like that, but I also think that these Georgia teams are stacked maybe even better than those Alabama teams that Clemson.
Well, they're built, and this Georgia team's also built to beat Tennessee. I mean, I'm not saying that's why Kirby Smart built his team this way, but the way that they are built, I mean, it's kind of Tennessee's kryptonite. They have this just really dangerous defensive front where they can get this pressure without having to bring the extra linebackers or DBs, and they can kind of sit back in coverage and shut down that part of the game, and then they get consistent pressure. I mean, that's the big secret to beating Tennessee. Pittsburgh used the same strategy. They just didn't have the dudes that Georgia had, and that's why Tennessee was able to beat Pittsburgh.
It's the only true way to stop Josh Heupel's offense is that you have to be able to get home with four guys and four guys only. You have to be able to drop back enough into coverage so that you don't just get, cracked over the top or whatever else Josh Heupel draws up there. You have to just be able to get into the backfield efficiently and consistently with only four dudes. And Georgia can do that. I mean, again, it is what it is, and I hate it so much. I cannot describe to you how much I hate it, because they're like, to me, like, Georgia's athletic program is so sorry outside of football. Like, Tennessee beat their basketball team by like 45 points this season. Like, they're just, and they were a nothing. They went and hired the guy that Florida wanted to fire for basketball.
Danny White's brother.
Yeah, it is. In fact, I think Tennessee has the superior White at the moment, but that's a funny way to say that. The better White brother at the moment. But I don't know. Outside of beating them, I don't know how you get back into that elite recruiting spot. So we'll see. But as I said, I like where Tennessee is recruiting wise, but does it instill confidence in me of like, oh yeah, in 3 years, Tennessee is going to be right where Georgia is? No, it just doesn't. And I don't know how anyone could say that necessarily. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But you just eventually have to win those games, just like Heupel did this last season. I mean, we were all saying like, eventually you're going to have to beat Alabama again. Well, he did that. And you've crossed that hurdle, and it won you recruits. Now it becomes, eventually you got to beat the guy down 75. And
you can't ignore the fact that, okay, you beat Alabama. This year's game will be it'll be a toss-up game. You go in Tuscaloosa, it's a close game. Nobody's going to bat an eye if Alabama wins. Tennessee's proven they can also beat Alabama. So, we'll see how that goes. I think the same goes for the Georgia game, even though it's in Knoxville. That Florida game in Gainesville, though, I feel like that's a must-win game for Tennessee this season. I feel like to really take the program to the next level, you have to go win at Florida. You have to beat this Florida team that's not that good right now. They didn't have a great season last year. They haven't had a great offseason. They've done okay in recruiting. They've also had some not so great moments like the Jaden Rashada deal. Fans are kind of still on the fence about Billy Napier. If it's another 6-6 year, I mean, Florida goes through coaches almost as fast as Tennessee. They fired Jim McElwain after back-to-back SEC East Division titles. They fired Dan Mullen 2 years after an 11-win season. They will fire Billy Napier if he doesn't take a big step forward this season. Tennessee's lost this game many times before. They lost it when Will Muschamp was there. They lost it when Jim McElwain was there. They cannot lose that game this season if they really want to take a big step forward. So I feel like Alabama and Georgia games get a lot of attention, especially for the recruiting aspect. I think that Florida game is one that, Tennessee fans really can't overlook.
Absolutely. A little bit of a problem for a day that's down the road a little bit closer to the season, but point still stands. To get to that point, you're going to have to either win those games or somehow win those battles. I mean, maybe just more shameless NIL spending. I don't know. Maybe that can help some. But regardless, I think that is it for the football portion of the show. And we're just going to finish with a little bit of baseball talk here. Because Tennessee, how would you describe what's happened with this baseball team? They underwhelmed. Although, some people expected this, the drop off. You lost so many players. Maybe the drop off was going to be drastic. Maybe not, but we'll talk about it right after I tell you about our final sponsor, Superbook Sports. Baseball is back, and the push for the postseason is on for hockey and hoops. Make it all count this spring with Superbook Sports. Superbook Sports is the best wagering app around with a direct line to experienced bookmakers behind the counter in Las Vegas. Plus, get a $250 bonus when you sign up, deposit, and wager in the same day. Don't let spring pass you by without winning money with Superbook Sports. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-889-9789. That is Superbook Sports. And with that said, Tennessee baseball gets waxed in the first two games against Florida. After only winning one game against LSU last weekend. And after the first two games against Florida, obviously the games against LSU were in Baton Rouge. These games this weekend were in Knoxville. And Florida just kind of punched you right in the mouth. And that's not great. But then in the third game, Tennessee run-ruled Florida. So, all is not completely lost there. But this far into the football season, or this baseball season, I would maybe like sort of a mid-season review here, Zach. How are you feeling?
I mean, the win on Saturday against Florida and the win to salvage the series against LSU, it kind of gives you a glimpse of how talented this team is and how good they can be. So I think there's plenty of reason for hope there. We've mentioned it before. You can look at Ole Miss last season, had a losing record in the SEC, and then they end up, national champions. The regular season is not going to determine, obviously from last season, Tennessee had a tremendous regular season, one of the best ever in college baseball. It did not end up very well for them. So I don't want to say that you're sinking the team at this point or you're giving up on them or anything, but there's plenty of reasons for concern. The fielding has not been great at all. It's been very frustrating to watch, just very ill-timed errors that just shouldn't happen at this level of baseball. Some of the base running mistakes, some of that's gotten better. This weekend, the base running really wasn't what did them in or anything like that. So there have been improvements there. And then there's just the inconsistency. I mean, you strike out, 32 times in the first two games against Florida, and Tony Vitello was kind of bemoaning the non-competitive at bats and looking at strike three and just some of that stuff where it's like, where's the edge to this team that last year's team had? Last year, the team could be down by 4 runs in the ninth inning, and you felt like they had a good chance. And plenty of times they came back and won, tied the game, or pushed it along, whatever the case may be. This team doesn't seem to have that same edge where they just want it, where they're out there to, in baseball, you talked about going to the plate with the going to do damage type approach. They're very passive, maybe in a way. I don't know if that's the right word or not, but some of those at bats you shouldn't have some of these issues that they're having. And maybe that's a chemistry thing where this is a new team, but it feels like by mid-April, some of that should be working out by now.
Some good points here in the comments. Eric says the baseballs are killing me. Way too many infield errors and no bats whatsoever. Kind of to your point there, Zach. Elias says knowing that the team can run rule a top 5 team in any given game makes it all the more frustrating. I completely agree there. Mr. Jones says, I swear Florida's first home run was foul. Maybe. I actually didn't see that game because I was on vacation. But I think to me, the disappointment of the starting pitching outside of Drew Beam, I think Drew Beam has really been. Can I go back to this? Some people tried to like cold take me with this a couple of weeks ago. I said, Chase Dollander, and we talked about it on the show. Chase Dollander had been kind of disappointing to start the season out. And I said, I think Drew Beam might be the best pitcher on this team at this point. And maybe it's time to talk about him being the Friday guy and shuffling the other dudes around. And I tweeted that, and some people were like, no, you're stupid. That's dumb. I don't know if you've been watching, but I don't want to say I told you so. But I think that I have at least proven that should be a conversation that should happen. I think a lot of people were tweeting about it over the weekend just because he was clearly the best who's out there out of the 3 starters. Burns has been disappointing. Dollander, it hasn't been like
he's had some bad luck too.
Yeah,
some of the fielding and some of the plays that aren't necessarily errors, but maybe should be made, or a really good defensive team makes. And kind of look, the best pitcher in the game often will need some of those plays over the course of a game. It's baseball, nobody goes out there and dominates every start out. So I think he's been missing a little bit of that as well. But no, he hasn't been as top 5, preseason pick like everybody thought he'd be.
The fielding errors have made me want to pull my hair out and makes me feel bad for the pitchers sometimes. But I mean, and like, I don't know the exact dynamics there, but Maui Bahuna basically got benched this weekend, didn't play. I didn't miss an injury there or anything.
I think they did chalk that up to an injury.
Okay. See, and like I said, I was on vacation, so don't shoot the messenger there.
I was out of town as well, but I did manage to stream here and there.
But just the fielding has killed me, and some of the other intangible things, I guess, where you're saying there, like, where is the killer instinct? Where is the fire? Like you saw, and maybe it really was just losing those dudes who were they were such powerful, like,
personalities.
I was thinking characters.
Yeah, and you can't manufacture that.
You can't. I mean, they were absolute spark plugs, some of those dudes. And you just can't make that up out of thin air. I think it's some of that. But I still do look at this team, like to Elias' point there, and you look and you go, okay, a great baseball team is here. There's a great baseball team in there. When they get Beam on the mound and they can get the bats going a little bit, they can beat anybody for sure. But can they do that consistently like they did in that Texas A&M series? And you're going to Arkansas this weekend. You're playing another top, what?
Yeah,
10,
they've had a tough go.
Team.
They're top 6, 7, and then Vanderbilt the week after another. It'll be the 4th straight. They'll have 4 straight weekend series against top 10 teams. That's tough.
It's crazy. That's SEC baseball. It just is what it is. But I would say I vote for shaking things up. Like I said, move Beam to Friday. Try something. They've been shaking up the batting lineup, and you've seen some guys emerge at different places. Griffin Merritt really made his surge on Sunday.
And we saw some of that personality from Merritt too after that game, where he talked about, hey, once this team figures it out, nobody's going to want to see us in the tournament or in Hoover. So maybe there's some of that starting to come out a little bit. Maybe they're starting to find their way a little bit. So they got plenty of time. They're still top. They're ranked number 16, I think, in D1's latest baseball rankings today. It's all there for them. I mean, all their goals are still in front of them that they want to accomplish.
Yeah, just got to get their heads screwed on straight, and maybe something like a Griffin Merritt emerging can be a spark plug there. We'll see.
It's almost like the same conversation as the basketball team in a way.
It does feel similar because you see this team and they go and they run rule Florida, and you go, okay, How can we not do this in every game? And that basketball team would go and beat Alabama, and then they go and lose to Missouri, and you go, what are we doing here?
Yep.
And maybe to Mr. Jones here, he says they started out hot last season, didn't finish well, and maybe they can flip it this season. That would
absolutely,
be nice.
absolutely. I mean, those wins didn't mean it was a fun regular season, but there's no banners being hung because of last regular season. They didn't get to where they wanted to be.
Oh, the tournament's coming up. We'll see what they do. So there's sort of our midseason reviews so far of a bit of a lackluster start for the baseball team, but maybe they can get it together this weekend against Arkansas. Obviously, no better time than now to go and beat up on that team that has obviously become one of Tennessee's biggest rivals at this point. All right. I'm Charlie Burris. That is Zach Reagan. Anything else for the fine folks at home, Zach, before we bounce?
No, I look forward to seeing everybody out at the spring game. If you're out there and you see us, come say hello.
Yeah, come say what's up. Hopefully, honestly don't know what kind of access we'll have. Maybe we'll be around the field, maybe just in the press box. Maybe they'll make us sit.
I'm not sure. Last year during their regular season, they didn't let you go on the field before the game, like typically in the past. You could go at the end of the fourth quarter, but I don't know if there'll be different rules for the spring game. No, we'll just have to see.
They have definitely in years past. I want to say I covered maybe a couple for Butch where we got to stand on the field the entire time, and then that first one with Heupel, we were in the press box primarily. I'm not sure, but either way, we'll be able to be there for the player or the interviews afterwards, whoever they end up setting out there for the interviews. So, and as I mentioned, maybe a live stream, maybe, I don't know. We'll see. We just gotta see the setup. We may be playing it by ear. But Charlie Burris, Zach Reagan, this is the A to Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. Thank you to everybody who watched. I like to point out every Mr. Jones, Elias, Eric, of course, Big Ten Jeff is here, Thomas, everybody who tuned in. Thank you. Even the who was the guy before? Yeah, Elo. He said that we were cool, laid back guys, even though he kept insulting Tennessee fans. So, Billy here, he says, "Go Vols, go Vols." That's it. And we may be doing a midweek segment too, so look out for that. It's all kind of. Oh, and we're probably doing a cameo on another Vol show. I'll tweet about it coming up this week. It just hasn't happened yet, so I don't want to blast it out there. Like the person with the show hasn't put it out there yet, so I don't want to put it out there. So watch out for that, and I think that's it. We will talk to y'all probably later this week.
See you guys later.